everyone, how are you doing this fine day? Hope you're enjoying your week. Welcome to another survival challenge, in particular, a Helldivers survival challenge. But not just any Helldivers survival challenge, because the Helldivers aren't gonna be in this video. For the first time ever, I'm gonna make a survival challenge with the Illuminates, because why not? They just released a big ass DLC free thing. They just added a bunch of shit with the Illuminates, okay? That's what they're doing, and that's what we're making this video for. They've greatly expanded the lore of the Illuminates in the last couple of months, and I haven't made a video on them yet, so that's what we're here to do today. If you've never been to my channel before, you've never seen a video, basically what happens is simple. I take a bunch of different characters, in this case factions, and I see if they could survive whatever particular challenge that I put them through. The challenge today is the Illuminate faction. They're going to invade these other factions. How's it gonna go? What's going down? It's gonna be great. It's gonna be adventure, action, romance. It's gonna be an epic tale. Just great, awesome, fantastic. But not wasting up your time. Let's get started. So first up, I suppose what I should do is tell you a little bit about the challenge and what our survivors might have to go up against in this particular challenge, specifically the Illuminate. What's their whole deal? What are they all about? And this is one of the reasons that I actually really like making videos about the Helldivers, because despite the fact that I've made like 12 fucking Helldivers videos in the past, every time I make a Helldivers video, I can kind of talk about something totally new, because every few weeks there's a new weapon or a new technological advancement that one of the factions had, or a whole new faction. Well, very recently they introduced the Heart of Democracy DLC, which added a bunch of new shit for the Illuminates, all kind of new weapons and enemy types and all sorts of shit, and that's really fucking cool. So, while I'm not going to go over the entire history of the Illuminates, I had a whole video that did that already. If you want to go check that out, you can. I'll link it here somewhere. I will be going over all the different enemy types and what you can expect to have to face if you're getting invaded by the fucking Illuminate. So first and most basic, the thing that actually defines the Illuminate as a race is the fact that they have very, very advanced mind control technology. This mind control is widespread, extremely potent, and can work on whole planets at the same time. It not only infects their mind, but it also mutates their biology. And they can do this at an extremely fast rate, as despite the fact that Super Earth has a really good grasp on what's going on in the universe, they generally know what's happening the moment it happens. They are not given enough time to intercept the Illuminates from taking over whole fucking planets with this mind control technology, despite the fact that their ships are capable of basically legitimately teleporting from one planet to another. We find out that Illuminates arrive on a planet basically after the whole planet has already been mind-fucked. This shit doesn't take days, it takes like an hour. It's super, super fast mind control technology. There do seem to be a lot of people who are capable of resisting it, as specifically Helldivers are shown being able to resist this mind control technology to some degree. It still affects them, it fucks with them a bit, but it doesn't straight up mind control and mutate them nearly as fast as it's shown to do to the citizens of planets that they invade. This mind control process can also be pushed back or forced to take far longer to actually accomplish if you have people on the planet willing to fight back against it. Because the way the mind control system works is that they have this giant fucking tower they launch down onto the surface of the planet, which just mind controls the whole area. This giant conduit pillar thing that is launched down is then protected by a bunch of these little mini pillar columns that shoot lightning at any people who even try to approach it, and is guarded by an entire fleet of warp ships that can instantly teleport any ground units they want directly to the surface of the planet to defend any point that they want on said planet. That's really all they have to do. With a couple of these monument pillar things that they shoot down to the ground, they could essentially take over vast swaths of the planet, as long as they could stop that planet from destroying those things. And these things are very, very durable. It requires small nuclear warheads in order to destroy them. You can't just run up and shoot them with a rocket launcher or some shit. This means that most races probably won't even have the means to actually properly take them down. It would take a solid military strike force with very, very powerful explosive or weaponry to actually destroy this fucking thing. And bringing up the warp ships, I might as well tell you all of the different enemy types that you might be seeing when you go up against the Illuminate. Now, the enemy types we've known for quite some time are the Voteless, the Watcher, the Harvester, and the Overseers. I'm not going to spend too much time going over this, just going to explain it real quick. The Voteless are any being that is successfully mind controlled by those giant pillars I was talking about before. They don't really have any will of their own, and they are just kind of these mindless zombies that attack anyone on sight. Not too mindless, because they are guided, like, well, no, I guess the mind would be whatever the fucking Illuminate tell them to do, because they don't attack the Overseers on sight, so obviously they have some capacity to think. And when you kill them, oftentimes a little bit of their actual personality is shown to come through from before they died. Like, you'll kill them and they'll salute Super Earth right before dying, or you'll kill them and you'll see their reaction as they look at their hands and like realize that there's some kind of deformed creature right before dying. So it seems like they're not completely mindless, more so their consciousness is being overridden and the actual person is still in that weird mutated monstrosity somewhere deep inside, which I gotta say is some pretty dark shit. The most dangerous thing about the voteless aren't the voteless themselves. They're actually not that dangerous when compared to something like the Overseer, but the fact that you can kill as many of them as you want and you're not putting a single dent in the numbers that the Illuminate have, because they're not Illuminates, they're your own people that have been turned against you, is a pretty fucking strong advantage. The next ground troop you have is the Overseer, which is really the only thing that we had originally that was even a true Illuminate. It is a big buff armored Illuminate with some kind of electric based weaponry, whether that be a shield and a spear. Some of them have guns to shoot lightning at you. The point of the matter is that this is the only actual being in the army that was an Illuminate. Literally everything else you were killing before this DLC released were not actually putting a dent in their numbers because they were all fucking drones or controlled people. This is something that makes the Illuminate very, very dangerous, because in massive battles, it doesn't matter if you're killing billions and billions and billions of their forces, a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of that number is actually a real kill of an Illuminate soldier. All of the other kills are just totally replaceable. Who gives a fuck? You also have something called an elevated Overseer, which is basically the same as an Overseer, except they have a jetpack and they fly through the air and they're harder to hit. The strength of an Illuminate is stated to be considerable, as any basic bitch Illuminate can take the head off of a Helldiver in a single punch and send it flying across the fucking battlefield, which is particularly impressive when you realize that Helldivers are actually not normal human strength, as Super Earth is a real big fan of genetic tampering and eugenics, and they have breeding programs across their entire species that has made everyone from their soldiers to their basic bitch civilians far more impressive physically than like you and I would be in real life. This is why the Helldivers can run for so long, carrying hundreds of pounds of equipment on top of them, and melee kill enemies that are made out of titanium, or fucking giant terminid monsters with their goddamn fists, or just butting them with the back of a shotgun. They can kill them that way. This is why genetic fuckery. The Overseers are so far beyond these characters that they could just literally one-shot them. Next up, you have the Harvester, which at the time was like the big daddy thing. It's a giant tripod ship thing that crawls around and is stated to be able to shoot lasers that can vaporize humans, as well as being covered by this giant force field that you have to put a lot of damage into to break, and the force field does indeed regenerate. You also have Watchers, that are these flying T-shaped drones that scan the battlefield for enemies, and when they find you, they shoot up a flare, call a warp ship, the warp ship shows up, and then just instantly teleports a bunch of dudes to the surface to deal with whatever problem that drone has just come into contact with. Now, moving on to the new shit, we do have the warp ships. While the warp ships did exist prior to the DLC, now we can actually interact with them and they'll actually fight back, and they're a legit enemy type now. The thing that makes the warp ships so good is that they kind of seem just like a basic drop ship. They show up, they drop people down to the planet, they leave, and then they might fire at you a little bit, but they're actually a little more complicated than that and way better than just drop ships, because they're not drop ships. They're warp ships. They're actually giant unmanned drones that are just ships with guns on it that have portals on the bottom. If you shoot down a drop ship, you're not actually killing any voteless or Illuminate because they're not inside the ship. What the warp ship is actually doing is creating a portal and teleporting enemies from another location onto the battlefield. For obvious reasons, this is really, really good. You're not killing any of them when you blow this shit up. You're just stopping them from teleporting to the battlefield. And again, this is kind of the thing that makes the Illuminate so dangerous. You can just keep slaughtering them and you're really not doing that much in the grand scheme of putting dents in their numbers. Pretty much all of their ships are completely unmanned, and the vast majority of their ground troops aren't actually them, it's your people. Again, I keep reiterating this, but I feel like no one talks about how important this is for the success of the Illuminates. In the first galactic war that took place in Helldivers 1, they were driven to near extinction by the Helldivers, so they came up with a bunch of ways to fight without actually having to put their own people in danger, and it's super fucking effective. The next enemy type we've been introduced to is the Flesh Mob, which is basically like a ton of different voteless that all come together to fuse into this one giant mutated like monstrosity. It's like 15 voteless. When you get them in a group, they go together and they fuse together into one big thing called a Flesh Mob. They're very, very powerful and extremely hard to take down. They have a lot of health, they do a lot of damage, and they run at you at very, very fast speed. The thing that makes these things things so dangerous is, one, yes, they're very, very strong, but also they're super hard to take down because there's several different voteless in one body. So one flesh mob is going to have like 15 hearts and 15 brains. In order to properly put it down, you have to destroy all of them, or else it'll still run on at least a couple. That, and at least to some extent, it seems like through the mutation process, their flesh and bone and muscle is actually getting a lot stronger and harder than it was when they were just regular people, which means you have to use much bigger, much more powerful weapons that are armor-piercing and explosive in order to take them down in any reasonable amount of time. The next ground trip they introduced is called the Crescent Overseer, and this is the one that really shows how strong these fucking things are, because the Crescent Overseer doesn't really have a gun. He has a mortar. They took a plasma mortar that is usually a mounted weapon on the side of a fucking tank or a ship or something, and they just ripped it off its hinges, threw it on their shoulder, and now start firing it. It fires a giant glob of superheated explosive plasma directly at their targets with enough heat to, once again, vaporize their fucking target because, again, superheated explosive plasma. This is not something that a normal person should be able to carry around and fire, but he does it anyway. He's like a mobile fucking little dude tank. Last enemy type that was added in the update are the Stingrays, which are essentially super fast, futuristic jet-looking things that fly around and do strafing runs across whole cityscapes. It fires plasma and electric weapons. Again, this is something you're going to see throughout the Illuminates. They're all basically plasma and electricity based, and they just pepper the fucking city with these little jets that fly back and forth super fast and are very, very difficult to hit. And like everything when it comes to the Illuminates, these ships are completely unmanned, so destroying the ship does virtually nothing. They can just make another one. It doesn't bother them in the slightest. Outside of enemy types, the most dangerous thing they have, that's probably up there with their mind control stuff, is their unique ability and mastery over black holes. And I should make this very clear. What they are capable of doing with the black holes in this series, I don't think I've ever seen in any fictional universe ever. It's very, very cool. First off, not only do they possess black fluid technology that allows them to make black holes, and while, yes, it's true, the Illuminates did not make the black hole that exists within Helldivers. That was created by Super Earth. The fact that it is their technology and they've shown such a mastery over that black hole means that I don't doubt whatsoever that they can create it themselves. At this point, they've shown such a mastery over black fluid in a way that Super Earth doesn't have. It honestly wouldn't make sense to me if they weren't capable of creating a black hole, because outside of just creating it, they're capable of piloting around like a fucking attack drone, just swallowing planets as it flies at massively faster than light speeds across the galaxy. This is something that most fictional universes aren't going to be able to overcome. The Illuminates have been shown being able to increase the size, strength, and speed of this black hole, making it considerably bigger than that of a normal planet. And not only that, they can also utilize the black hole, which, may I remind you, is consistently called a black hole, not a wormhole, but they can use that black hole as a wormhole. Essentially, the Illuminates can turn a black hole temporarily into a wormhole so that they can transport troops out of said black hole, then transport the wormhole back into a black hole that can then continue to attack. Basically, they can fly in and out of the black hole whenever they want and use it as essentially a teleporter, whereas all other factions, when they go up to it, it's just a fucking black hole and it just fucking kills them. Again, let me stress, this is something that I don't think I've ever seen any other fictional universe be able to do. Essentially, if the Illuminate want to do something to a black hole, they can do it. And there really doesn't seem to be a whole lot of limits of what they can do with it. This is by far their strongest weapon, and I think you could very easily call it their nuclear option. And that's it. I think we're done. There might be something else I'm forgetting. If so, I'll cover it in the video when we continue going later on. But for now, I think we're good. So let's get to the challenges, shall we? First up on the chopping block, we have the Covenant from Halo. And this one's interesting because I think it would be very, very difficult to come to any conclusion but the conclusion that the Illuminates were very clearly inspired, at least to some extent, by the Covenant themselves. Ergo, their weapons and whole general vibe kind of seem very, very similar to the Covenant. But if you've seen my videos before, you know how I structure them. The first faction / character on the list always does the worst, so obviously they're not going to beat the Illuminate. And there are a lot of reasons for this that I think that people at first are probably going to disagree with as I talk, but the more I talk, I think the more sense it's going to start making. Truth is that the whole fandom around Halo, I think that they're wrong about the technology in their own series. They alter, ignore, and manipulate information that the series tells you to make you believe that the Covenant are actually a lot stronger than they really are, and just let me explain. So, one of the main reasons why the Illuminate are going to absolutely fucking destroy the Covenant is because the Illuminate use the weakness of the Covenant's main shielding technology, which is plasma, which many people are going to disagree with and say that the plasma that the Covenants use are not actually plasma, it's actually hard light, and hard light was made by the Forerunners, and it is significantly more advanced than plasma. It's hotter, it's more destructive, it can do way more things. This is not true entirely. Like, it's partially true, but it's not entirely true. Hard light is not actually a substance in of itself. It is a process that is done to ionic particles that make them stick together and turn them into a solid. Just calling something hard light does not explain what it's actually made out of. You can have something like a bridge that's made out of hard light, which is literally just light solidified, or you can have plasma weapons that shoot hard light, and that would be superheated hard light because that hard light was used on plasma as opposed to just regular light. So there's actually different variations of hard light that work in different ways. You wouldn't use the same hard light the Covenant shoot out of their guns to build that bridge. They're very different and behave in different ways. So the idea of saying that the guns don't shoot plasma, they shoot hard light, isn't actually telling me what is being fired out of the gun. When you actually look at what the shit that's being fired out of the gun does and what it is, you realize very quickly it's fucking plasma. All plasma is something that is superheated to the point the electrons get separated from the atom. That's it. It's all over the place. In fact, 99.9% of our viewable universe is considered plasma. There's plasma in fire, there's plasma in electricity, there's plasma in stars, there's plasma in nuclear reactors, there's plasma in your fucking blood cells, for Christ's sake. It's everywhere. When you actually read the lore of Halo that describes what the hard light projectiles are that are fired out of the weapons, they are described in this way, meaning, guess what? They're fucking plasma. All hard light is, and the only description that we get of hard light, is a process of taking ionic particles and solidifying them, which, by the way, plasma is. They're ionic particles. So it makes perfect sense that the hard light projectiles the weapons are firing are indeed plasma. The people who are saying that the plasma that's being fired is not plasma, I don't get where they're getting this argument from. They say this so they can then use the argument that hard light is somehow superior to that of normal plasma, so that when we try to talk about these sort of versus battle like scenarios, they can say, well, yeah, your character uses plasma, but you're not going to get through our energy shields because our energy shields are weak to hard light, not plasma, to kind of like bypass and sort of wiggle their way around the debate. The problem with that is that there's absolutely no evidence that hard light projectiles are in any way superior to normal plasma. Plasma in our real world universe can get as hot as 150 million fucking degrees. The most heat resistant material that exists on our planet is tungsten, and it has a melting point of 8,000 degrees. In what way can you possibly prove that the hard light projectiles being shot out of Covenant weapons are hotter than 150 million fucking degrees? You can't, because there's no evidence in Halo that that's the case. That's just some shit that y'all are guessing at. Plasma is an incredibly varied substance that can have all sorts of different effects and forms. We can actually have solidified plasma in real life. It's possible. Plasma in our real world can come in gas, liquid, or solid forms with various heat levels and usages. The only difference between the hard light projectiles that exist within the Covenant is the method by which the plasma is made into a solid, and that method can be utilized across more than just plasma. It can also be utilized across just regular light particles. That's the thing that makes it so cool, but it doesn't make it stronger, and we see this very clearly. Within the Halo universe, there are hard light shields. The hard light shields are very clearly shown being able to be broken by regular fucking weapons, but are particularly weak against plasma. Again, this makes sense because plasma is a superheated substance. The separation of ionic particles happens when you increase the heat of something. So when you fire a plasma round at the hard light shields, it makes sense that it would be weak, its particles would separate, and it would lose its solid form. This makes sense when given a scientific explanation. Why am I bringing all this up? Why am I talking about fucking plasma? Because the Illuminate use almost entirely plasma technology, and the energy shields that the Covenant have are going to be completely 100% useless against all of their weaponry. And people are going to say in the comments that the shit's not plasma and they're not weak to plasma, they're weak to hard light. This is bullshit. If you actually read the lore of Halo and understand what hard light is, you would know that it is in no way superior to normal plasma. It is just the method by which you make plasma hard. There's this general idea when talking about Halo that the fans of Halo have, where if something is created by the Forerunners, it's automatically superior superior to that of normal shit, as opposed to just behaving in a different way. Like, there's really no evidence that the plasma that's being shot out of the guns of the Covenant are any hotter or more powerful or more destructive than any other form of plasma. It was just solidified. I mean, fuck, if we're just gonna look at plasma behaving differently in Halo, do the hard light thing, and solely due to that we're going to say that it's superior, plasma also acts differently in Helldivers than it normally does. In Helldivers, there's a gun called a Scorcher, which fires out plasma bolts that are unstable and explode on contact. That's not something plasma does. Plasma can't be set to fucking explode, but it does in Helldivers. So am I to say that the plasma in Helldivers isn't actually plasma, but it's some sort of superior element beyond plasma because it's behaving in a way that plasma's not? What about the fucking Illuminate mortars? They have these massive plasma mortars that fire out a giant glob of plasma. It hits, it fucking explodes. Again, not what would happen if you fired plasma at someone. There is literally zero evidence in Halo that the Illuminate plasma weapons would not completely fucking decimate the shields of the Covenant. Nothing. But you can't say the same about the opposite. The shields that the Illuminate overseers use to protect themselves against enemies does not have a weakness. You cannot destroy it using plasma weapons, heat-based weapons, really strong weapons, really high penetration weapons. You can't get through them. You have to shoot around them. The only way that you can actually get around the shielding is by firing something that's explosive that the shielding doesn't actually cover, because the shield doesn't have full coverage. It's kind of like a big ass, sort of like Roman centurion shield they cover in front of them. You can shoot at their feet. Maybe you can get around it and shoot their arm or something. But as far as we're aware, these fucking things are basically indestructible, which will give them a massive advantage against the Covenant because their weapons won't weaken the shielding of the Illuminate, but the Illuminate weapons will absolutely fucking destroy the shielding that the Covenant have. So this is the only faction that I have on this list where the Illuminates can just straight up destroy them in open warfare without really even needing to pull out any of their big guns. However, if they do pull out their big guns, which they will be, they're the Illuminates, it's kind of what they do, the Covenant have absolutely no defense for world-leveled mind control that can instantly turn them all into more powerful versions of Voteless that will then turn on their allies and start killing themselves. The Illuminates are capable of mind controlling whole planets of population in just a couple of hours. That and the fact that the Illuminates just have way more numbers than the Covenants means that I don't see any reasonable way the Covenants will be able to overcome the Illuminates in this situation. The only other thing I can think of that people might use as an argument as to why the Covenant might win is the fact that they have access to some Forerunner technology, and the Forerunner technology is superior to that the Illuminate technology, and yeah. I get it. This is also a super misleading argument, as the Covenant do have some Forerunner technology, but they don't really understand it or are capable of utilizing it to its full extent. This is the reason why the UNSC is capable of fighting against them despite the fact they have Forerunner technology, because they're not really able to utilize it. The only thing that the Covenant has that is capable of utilizing the Forerunner technology to its full extent are the Engineers, who consider the Covenant their slavers and completely refuse to help them in any way, and is sort of like rooting for their downfall. They literally have like a bit of an uprising at one point. It's a pretty major plot point in the games that the Engineers fucking despise the Covenant and won't do anything to help them actually do any of the crazy Forerunner shit that the Engineers are capable of doing. Yes, the Engineers are capable of doing shit like creating life and affecting reality, but they're not gonna give that shit to the Covenant. Fuck the Covenant. They want them to die. In fact, depending on when this war takes place, it's very possible the Engineers will just go over to the Illuminate side and start helping them with shit. So yeah, no, the Covenant are fucked here. If you're enjoying the video, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, share, and join the membership. Remember, you join the membership, you get videos early. Don't forget that I started a second channel called Rouga's Real House, where I put any video that I feel like making over there that is not a survival challenge. While I only have one video over there so far, and I know my second video hasn't gone up, and I said it was going to go up a while ago, I'm aware. I've been extremely busy in my real life, and I just haven't had time to actually put videos over there. And with how well the channel is currently doing with the Helldivers and the Doom videos, and summer just hit, my viewership on this channel has gone so much, it would just be kind of dumb for me not to lean into it and make a lot of Doom and Helldivers content at the moment. So I don't really know when my second video will actually be over there, but I will. I promise you, I will start doing stuff more consistently over there. I just kind of started that channel at a very bad time. Also, if you are new to the channel, which I imagine is going to be quite a few new people with these videos that are releasing, don't forget that I have streams every weekend, either Saturday or Sunday at 7 p.m, where I have open debate streams where anybody can come in and debate anybody else, and it's just sort of like this fun thing, as well as tier list streams where the whole community comes together and helps build just random bullshit tier lists. It's a lot of fun. The links to all that shit is down below in the pinned comment. the Discord, Rouga's Real House, all of that shit's down there. If you're interested in any of it, make sure to give it a click, and I'll see you guys there. Now, back to the video. Next up, we have the Autobots from Transformers. This is going to be a super quick one, because on the ground, the Illuminates can't do shit against the Transformers. Transformers are stupidly overpowered. Actually, we don't even need to really do the Autobots. We can do the Autobots and the Decepticons together, because I really don't think it's going to make much of a difference. Even if we put them on the same planet, and the Illuminates try to fight against them, there's nothing the ground forces can do. They can't mind control them, because they're fucking machined. We don't know if that mind control technology works on a race of machine creatures. None of their guns are going to do any damage. They really won't be able to do anything to them. You're talking about characters like Optimus Prime, who can survive being in the epicenter of a black hole, and Megatron, who could survive being on an exploding planet. These characters are so far beyond what the Illuminate can do that there's really no point in even talking about a war on the ground. The reason why it's going to be very quick, though, and there's really not a whole lot to say here, is because the Illuminates do have control over that massive planet-sized black hole that it can just send on any planet that the Autobots or Decepticons are currently at. Neither the Autobots or the Decepticons have a particularly large number of people, and they're generally stuck to one planet at a time, as depending on where in the story this takes place, they don't really have reliable technology that can allow them to travel from one planet to another quickly, especially not quicker than the black hole travel. So it's not going to be viable for them to escape or somehow leave once the black hole comes for them. And even if the black hole was coming for them, they don't really have the scanning technology that can see the black hole coming for them until it's way too late to actually do anything about it. And while it's true I did say that Optimus Prime survived the epicenter of a black hole, it was a much smaller black hole than what the black hole that the fucking Illuminates use are. The Illuminate black hole is the size of a planet, but they are capable of increasing its size by feeding it black fluid. The only reason why the black hole is only the size of a planet is because as they're feeding it black fluid, Super Earth is draining it of black fluid, meaning it's sort of at a static size. But if you remove Super Earth from the scenario and you just have the Illuminates there, they can just keep feeding it black fluid, and it can get bigger and bigger and bigger, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times the size of a fucking planet. And the fact of the matter is that the black hole that Optimus Prime was in was like the size of like a block. Like like the level of power between the one he survived and the one that he's gonna get hit with are totally different. If the Decepticons and the Autobots are both on the same planet at the same time, and the Illuminates go down, try to war with them, see that they can't do shit to them, and just chuck a black hole at the planets, they're all dead. There's literally nothing that they can do. Even characters in the Transformers universe that should be basically immortal, like Starscream, because he has a piece of the Allspark in him, would be permanently dead because he still needs his body to come back to, and his body would like basically cease to exist, being completely torn apart and ripped and into a black hole. He's done. They would all be done. This would be a super fast fight. All that would need to happen is for the Illuminates to come to the conclusion that they can't harm them with normal weaponry, and then immediately use the black hole. And that's why the Illuminates are kind of a difficult faction to talk about, because for the vast majority of factions that I could put against the Illuminate, if they're of a level of power that makes them a good challenge for the Illuminate on the ground floor, they can pretty much instantly then be wiped out by the black hole. The black hole is so far beyond the rest of the power of the Illuminates, it's kind of like an automatic death sentence to anything that can challenge the Illuminates, unless I put something that's so ungodly overpowered that there's not even really a point in having a conversation about it. Like, I would have to start throwing cosmic level beings that can survive the explosion of solar systems in order for them to be able to survive and deal with the black hole. Or they would have to have some sort of ability to drain the power from a black hole, like the Forerunners, which is also another argument that people might bring up for the Covenant, and I completely forgot to bring it up. The Forerunners were capable of absorbing the energy of a black hole and completely eliminating black holes. And again, yes, the Covenant do have some minor technology of the Forerunners. They do not have the ability to weaken a black hole. That is something that only the Forerunners have, so the Covenant would still lose. Don't jump to that fucking argument either. It's a bad argument. But yeah, given that the Transformers don't actually have the power to siphon energy from the black hole or remove it in any way, they're gonna have to deal with it, and they're gonna die. And honestly, even if they did have the ability to siphon the energy, Super Earth also has the ability to siphon the energy, and the Illuminates haven't really had any trouble with competing with them siphoning it by feeding the black hole at the same rate. So yeah, fucking Transformers die. They die pretty easily. Next on the list, we have Orks from Warhammer 40k, and this might be one of the most difficult factions I have ever had to cover on this channel, because like if I had to describe, you know, what the whole thing, like the strength that the faction has, right? The Illuminate strength is the mind control shit and the black hole shit. That's like their main thing. That's really, really good. If I had to describe what the strength of the Orks was, it would be just randomness. There are so many weapons within the Orks faction that you just don't know what's gonna it's like gambling almost, basically. Even the Orks don't know all the time what their guns are gonna do when they fire them. It makes it very difficult to fight them, and it causes a ton of chaos. It oftentimes kills their own people, and they just laugh and think it's funny. They don't really care all that much. There's no war that happens with the Orks that isn't just a bunch of random bullshit on a battlefield. Like, let me give me an example of some of the stuff the Orks can do, right? They don't have like ships in the traditional sense. What they have is called an Ork rock. They basically take an asteroid and they carve out the inside of it and strap a bunch of rockets to it, fill it up with Orks, and then just launch it down at planets. The idea of this is that when these asteroids launch to planets, it destroys a large portion of said planet, kills a ton of people, including most of the Orks that are inside the asteroid, and then the Orks that survive can just fly out of the asteroid and just start attacking the planet all willy-nilly, and they also have a massive fortified asteroid fortress that is like just sitting on the planet. They have teleportation guns where they fire literally like a teleportation beam thing at somebody, and then that person gets teleported to a random location. The Orks themselves don't know where they're going to be teleported. So you could shoot a soldier and he could be teleported on the inside of another soldier, instantly killing them both. He could be teleported 150 feet in the air and then fall to his death on top of another enemy unit. He can just teleport like somewhere that's not really that harmful, you know, like a few feet to the left or on the other side of the fucking city. Like all sorts of things could happen. And the idea is that if you give enough Orks this weapon, they're just firing into the other army, it's impossible for that army to strategize in any way about what's going on because they have no idea where their troops are going to be. You're just moving the locations of all of their troops around, which is causing chaos and death and all of that shit. They have something that's basically like a gravity gun where they shoot something and that thing lifts up in the air and then it smashes down on top of everything and then creates this shockwave that kills everyone in the area. They have this one weapon that shoots like a bunch of fucking rockets that are tied to like barbed wire, and the rockets are all set on timers to fly in different directions. So they'll fire it, and then one rocket will fire, it'll like have this cage sort of barbed wire thing, you know, okay, so it'll post into the ground, and then the other rocket will go off, and then it'll start swinging the barbed wire around in circles and slicing a bunch of dudes in half, and then when it runs out, another rocket will go off, and it'll start rocketing in a different direction. So like, again, you don't know who you're damaging or what area you're damaging, you just know that this thing's gonna cause a lot of random fucking destruction. And again, I could just go on and on and on. This is basically all of the weapons of the Orks. They're all just fucking random and weird. So it's really hard to dictate how a battle would go with the Orks because, again, it's like fucking going gambling. You're just like you're going to a casino, and will they do well? Is the fucking odds in their favor now? Maybe, I don't fucking know. When it comes to a conversation of who would win between the Orks and the Illuminates, it's very hard to come to a conclusion. So I'm gonna do my best here, but it's weird. There's a reason why I haven't talked about the Orks before now. It's a really strange faction to talk about. It's fun, interesting scenarios, but it's strange. You gotta admit it's strange, guys. So do I think that the Orks will win against the Illuminate if they come into a war? No, I don't. If they did win, the only reason why they would is because of their ridiculous numbers. But honestly, I think the Illuminates kind of get rid of that with all of the mind control shit. And let's actually get into that, because I feel like Warhammer fans are going to automatically come to some pretty major assumptions that a lot of this stuff the Illuminates do aren't going to work on the Orks, which I think is not true at all. I think it'll work just fine. So I think one thing that a lot of Warhammer fans are going to say is that the Orks are immune to mind control, or at least highly resistant to mind control, due to them being resistant to the corruption that comes from the chaos, and the fact that all the Orks have latent psychic abilities with their crazy imagination powers that they have. There's some issues I have with that. For one, on an individual level, the Orks actually aren't very powerful at all psychically and are very susceptible to mental manipulation. It's really just as a collective that they're strong, and that doesn't translate into a defense against mental manipulation. They're just strong in the way that they can affect reality with their collective beliefs. As far as being immune to the chaos corruption, they were genetically designed to not be affected to specifically chaos. Not all mental mind control. Chaos was the enemy enemy of the creators of the Orks, and Orks wanted them to be immune because they were basically created to be the perfect weapon against chaos, and they cannot be affected by chaos. They can be affected by other mental abilities, and like I said, on an individual level, they don't really have any good mental abilities. In fact, mentally, they're very weak and very easily influenced. So I don't think that in any way they would be able to resist the planetary-wide mind fuckery that the Illuminates are capable of doing within a couple of hours. This means that it doesn't really matter how many more people the Orks have than the Illuminate. The Illuminate will just increase their numbers by taking them from the Orks directly and just having a bunch of Ork versus Ork fights. You also have to think about the fact that the Illuminates voteless and the flesh mobs are going to become far more powerful, because now instead of being created using humans, they're being created using Orks. So you're basically going to have like super voteless and super flesh mobs attacking the Orks that are just going to keep coming again and again and again and again. As long as the Orks keep sending troops, they're going to keep having to fight against more people. The Illuminates can essentially just stay the fuck out of it and just watch the Orks kill themselves forever. Now, you could try to make the argument that, well, the Orks can come together and all believe collectively that they can't be mind controlled, ergo they won't be able to be mind controlled, but I have two issues with that. One, they're too dumb to ever actually do that and plan that out in that way, but also, that's not really how the collective shit works. They don't just believe something and then that thing happens. There's a potency to it based on how many people believe it. So if 10 Orks come together and believe something, it'll happen, but it won't be particularly strong. If 1 million Orks believe it, it'll be stronger. If 10 million believe it, it'll be stronger. If 100 billion believe it, it'll be even stronger. It never just becomes something that is. So while it is true that if they all believed that they couldn't be mind controlled, this would definitely make their resistance to the mind control far more potent, but it wouldn't be a for sure thing, and they could still possibly be mind controlled by it. We've seen things like this in the past. They do believe that things that are painted red go faster than things that aren't painted red. However, there are things that aren't painted red that are so fast that they are faster than things that are painted red. It's just that if you paint something red, those things go faster than if they're not painted red. You see what I'm saying? It's not like the fastest things in the entire universe are all red. There are super fast things that aren't painted red. That's my point. You also have the fact the Orks have absolutely no answer to the black hole shit that the Illuminate can do. I mean, the closest thing that they have to like a world-destroying shit like that would be the Ork moon, but that technology has been lost to time and the Orks can't do that anymore. And even then, the Ork moon was just like a lesser, shittier version of the black hole. In case you're not aware, the Ork moon was essentially this moon that they built and they put a giant fucking Ork face on it, and they would fly up to planets and fuck up the gravitational shit of the planet, destroy the planet into little pieces, and then they would take the piece of the planet, add it to the Ork moon and make it even bigger, and just go from planet to planet to planet, destroying a bunch of planets. It was a very, very powerful thing that the Orks did, and it was specifically very dangerous in the Warhammer world because Warhammer is extremely overpopulated, and it's not a good thing to destroy planets. Even the Imperium of Man, although they do have exterminatus that can destroy a planet, they very, very rarely use it because they don't want to add to the overpopulation problem that the universe has. Orks are so dumb and just don't care that they were just destroying planets left and right with this shit, so it had to be dealt with, and now they don't have access to that technology anymore. The Illuminates, kind of like the Orks, don't really give a shit about destroying planets because they're capable of living in other universes or other galaxies. It really doesn't matter. They can go anywhere they want, live wherever they want. They can live off their ships if they wanted to. We actually don't know where they're currently residing. The theory is that they're in a totally different universe somewhere, and they're traveling back and forth from this other universe, so they have no issues in blowing up planets. They've blown up like 5 or 6 or 7 planets in a couple of weeks. It's really not an issue to them. And again, the giant planet-sized black hole that they chuck across the galaxy is far more potent than the Ork moon ever was anyway. In all honesty, if the Illuminates just didn't want to fight at all and just made a black hole and started piloting around killing Orks, that would be fine. The Orks don't have a way of stopping it. See, the Illuminate actually have to engage in battle with Super Earth because Super Earth has the technology to stop the black hole. If the Illuminate sat back and did nothing, the black hole would be overcome and it would fail to destroy Super Earth. That's not the case with the Orks. They don't have a way of stopping it, so they would just infinitely keep getting fucked up by this black hole, and the Illuminates don't even really need to engage them if they don't want to. Also, this is a pretty important fact that I just thought of. If the Illuminate starts mind controlling the Orks and turning them into Volus and shit, wouldn't they be able to utilize the whole imagination belief ability? The way the Illuminates run their society is that there is a high high council of its most intelligent members who essentially decide things for the society, and then they mind fuck the whole of society to just believe the things that they want them to believe to make the society as successful as possible. That's how they function. If they did something similar like that to the Orks using the Ork abilities and make the Orks believe whatever the fuck the Illuminate want them to believe, the Illuminate could essentially utilize that imagination power for their own purposes, and with it not being in the hands of the Orks who are really fucking dumb and being in the hands of the Illuminate who are super geniuses, they could essentially do literally anything. I mean, they could literally affect all of reality and the concepts of the universe to have things be whatever way they want it to be. Mind fucking the Ork society and having the Orks actually join the Illuminate under the same umbrella would actually make the Illuminate significantly more powerful than either faction was before. Like, they would basically be gods at that point. So yeah, I don't think that the Orks could possibly win this. I think they would be annoying. I think they would be a pain. I think Illuminates would probably be annoyed at the idea that these dudes just don't give a fuck if they die. And anytime they go on the battlefield, they would just be very, very difficult to strategize in any way. But honestly, the Illuminates don't really have to strategize. Like I said, during battles, they don't send in their own people for the most part. They have their enemies fight themselves. So the chaoticness of the battlefield can get as out of control as the fucking Orks want it to, and it really shouldn't affect the Illuminates all that much. The only real problem that I see the Illuminates having with the Orks are the fungal spores. So in case you don't know anything about the Orks, basically when an Ork dies, it kind of explodes and then it releases a bunch of fungal spores. Those spores then grow into more Orks. So basically, the more Orks you kill, the more Orks you're creating. This is why the Orks can never be fully eliminated, because killing them actually brings more. It's literally the whole Hydra chant that, like, you cut off one head and two more grow in its place sort of thing, but it's way more than two. This is why the Orks have such a ridiculously high number. Even if you leave the Orks alone and don't kill any of them, they'll start killing each other and just warring with each other, which will then just keep infinitely growing their population to ridiculous numbers. Having said that, if the Illuminates are mind controlling the Orks using their mind control technology, they will also be acquiring that same power for their version of Orks. Every single Ork vote list that is shot down will create more and more Ork vote lists, so you're kind of looking at basically an infinite war. The only way I really see them getting around this is if the Illuminate use the imagination power of their Orks in order to essentially erase the enemy Orks from being able to use that spore power, or possibly they can make all of the Orks on their side believe that enemy Orks' spores become Illuminate spores. So basically, like, every time you kill an enemy, he'll produce spores that create more Orks, but those Orks turn out as voteless Orks instead of, like, their Orks, because the Illuminate mind fucked all of their Orks in order to believe that to happen. Like, I could see something like that happening. Really, the main reason why the Illuminates are winning is because they can better utilize the imagination power than the Orks themselves are capable of utilizing. So while I don't think this is going to be an easy one, and it'll probably be the closest fight on this list, I still think the Illuminates probably take it because they're more intelligent and they can mind control the fuck out of the Orks. That's really it. That's all I need. Last up, but surely not least, we have the Sentinels from Doom. This is another one that's going to be very, very, very short. So I'm not going to waste any of your time here. The Sentinels fucking dominate. As I thought more about it, I started to realize that it's almost like the Sentinels were specifically designed to fuck up the Illuminates as much as humanly possible. There's literally no tactic that the Illuminates use, which are usually incredibly effective tactics, that are going to do anything to the Sentinels. The Illuminates normally mind control entire populations and send that population to fight against other people within the population. All right, cool. The Sentinels are extremely heavily resistant to any form of mind control due to being guided and genetically modified by the Wraiths to literally having Wraith DNA in their body. Wraiths who are alternate dimensional psychic gods. This genetic tampering within the Sentinels allowed them to heavily resist even the demonic corruption, which is a magical mind, soul, and body manipulation technique, and normally is capable of taking over whole universes very quickly, was only able to actually affect like half the Sentinels over the course of several decades. And that is a large-scale, multiversal form of mind control that is so far beyond the Illuminate levels of mind control that there is no argument that I can think of to even be made that the Illuminate mind control would in any way work on a single Sentinel soldier. The Sentinels are physically stronger, faster, have weapons that negate all durability, which means all of the shielding and armor that the Illuminates use aren't going to do anything to actually defend against their attacks. They have magically enhanced armor that protects against physical and magical attacks, meaning that almost no Illuminate weapons are really going to do anything to their armor either. The Illuminates literally have no way of winning on the ground against Sentinels, even if I don't utilize the giant Atlan mechs and flying, fire-breathing magical dragons that they have. This is not even a close fight. So you would think, okay, that's fine. They're just going to chuck a black hole, right? Wrong. The Sentinels have a trans-dimensional barrier that they created that covers the entire universe and keeps all of the demons and all invaders outside of the universe from entering their universe. There's no reason why they can't use that trans-dimensional barrier to make a slightly smaller barrier that surrounds their entire solar system or cluster or galaxy, to the point that the Illuminates can't send a black hole to get through that barrier. It'll just fucking hit the barrier and stop. This would also completely disable the Illuminates' teleportation technology, which is another extremely potent thing that they are capable of using for war, since they can literally just teleport to whatever planet or wherever in the galaxy they want to go instantaneously, because the trans-dimensional barrier was specifically created to keep demons who can teleport between multiple universes from being able to teleport, which means the barrier will not only stop the black hole, but it will also stop the Illuminates from entering the barrier despite the fact they have teleportation. There's just no fucking way in hell the Illuminates can actually win this. All of their nuclear options are completely disabled, and without that, in just a straight up fight on the ground, they don't stand a fucking chance. The Sentinels are not just a sci-fi race. They are a sci-fi and fantasy race. They're a bunch of super powered warrior wizards. And unlike all the shit that I said about the Covenant, where like their plasma's argued to be better than normal plasmas, hard light and all that shit, but it's not really, that's actually not the case for the Sentinels. The Sentinels' weapons are actually specifically stated within the lore to be magically enhanced, to be far more potent than normal elements that it is. Their fire shit is not fire shit, it's magical dragon fire. Their plasma weapons aren't just weapons that fire plasma, they have mystical runes on the gun that enhance the plasma, making it far more powerful than it otherwise could be. Their Wraith energy shields are mystical and so strong that even Argent energy weapons that, again, negate durability can't get through them. Their weapons that are Wraith weapons are capable of matching the Argent weapons in terms of combat, and the only thing that can block a Wraith weapon is an Argent or Wraith energy shield, because again, they negate that durability negation ability. This is a fucking wash. It's not even close. I'm not gonna lie to you, it's gonna be a hell of a fucking thing coming up with a proper army that can actually take on the Sentinels. These motherfuckers are insane. The lore that they added in the Dark Ages is so fucking stupidly badass. This is gonna be fun. But that's all I got for today. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, share, and join the membership. Remember, you join the membership, you get videos early. And always remember, y'all stay safe out there, you hear?